Welcome to the Purpose Podcast, where we help business owners and entrepreneurs all over live with intention. I'm your host, Gordon, and today I'm very excited to welcome a guest, someone that I don't know very well, but I'm very interested in getting to know. We have Sean Magee of Payroll Networks. Welcome, Sean.
Hi, Gordon. Good morning.
Good morning, man. Got a little bit different digs than normal. You did the late morning choice, which is at the house here. Typically, we do this at our Purpose Networking meeting, so excited to get the chance to know you a little bit. The way this typically works, Sean, just chilling, having a conversation, right? But we do like to give the listeners and watchers a little chance to get to know you a bit and your background and what Payroll Networks is. So you want to give us a little 30,000 foot view of yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So a little bit about myself. Moved down from Pennsylvania about 5 years ago.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm in the Wake Forest area right now. I have a beautiful wife, Heather. She's a hairstylist at Salt Hair in Wake Forest, the Heritage area.
Nice.
And then I have a 12-year-old son who is in the Heritage Middle School right now.
Cool.
Outstanding lacrosse player.
Is he?
Yeah. So
nice.
All the travel camps and the day-to-day activities are just ramping up, and just happy for the indoor sports right now for the hot weather.
Oh my gosh. It's been ridiculous.
Right. And then relating to you with the baby, we have ours a little later. So we're halfway through. December 29th is the due date.
Mazel tov.
Thank
you. So excited
you.
for you guys. That's awesome.
So
second kid, right?
Second child, yeah.
That's a long way, in between kids too. That'll be interesting, I think.
It is, but the exciting part is that this is going to be a girl, and it's going to bring our family complete. So now I have a boy and a girl, and it's just so exciting, and we feel very blessed. So just all good stuff.
That's so cool. And so you got a growing family, you got your growing brood, and you came down here for work, or what did you come down here for?
Yeah, I came down here for work. So quick backstory on that. I used to work with a big company called Paychex.
Okay.
I was with them for several years doing what I do now. I've been doing payroll, HR, streamlining, and compliance for better part of a decade. And I was up there in Pennsylvania. I worked the New York, New Jersey, tri-state area, and then moved down here because of the growth for Raleigh. It was the number one place to live, the Wake Forest, Raleigh area. And and the trajectory of ROI and blah, 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 just quality of living overall. It brought my family down here just for the opportunity, and it has been phenomenal on that part.
Cool.
Then the hardest part is that my main family, is still up in Pennsylvania.
Sure.
So trying to make that work. But everybody's happy, healthy up there. Hi, Mom. I know they'll all see this at some point.
Hi, Mom.
But right now I came down here, switched over within the last year to Payroll Network.
Okay.
Reason being is working with a big box company, I saw more opportunity to show the customer service and customization side of working hand in hand with businesses. And Payroll Network, to me, it truly is something different, especially being in this industry for a better part of a decade, where they have over a third of their clients are nonprofit. They focus highly on the implementation and the hand-holding of making sure customers are happy. So in an industry where there's about 30% turnover when it comes down to clients for HCM companies, Payroll Network has never had turnover higher than 6%.
That seems incredible.
Yeah, and throughout the implementation process, where you work with the sales rep, you're like, yep, I want to do it. And then you go transition to the client services team, and they get you all set up, and you go to your normal day routine. Usually there's a lot of disconnect, and that's where clients are like, I don't really feel like you guys are taking care of me. This is more of a hands-off approach. I'm just a number.
Okay.
In this company, they have a 98% customer satisfaction rate through implementation.
Nice.
So those two stats side by side, along with the personalities and opportunities that the company affords me, is why I made the transition from a national name brand to a service
Paychex
bureau.
I've heard of, for sure.
Yeah, but Payroll Network, right? This is, before I joined the group, who were they?
Right.
And that's why I was hired.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. And it could become ubiquitous. You never know. It's because it is the kind of name. But so I know a lot of people listening and watching might not know that much about payroll and HR software platforms, right? So you mentioned a term, was it PCN? Was that the term you used?
When?
You just now, or you? What is it? What is it called? What is this?
Oh, HCM.
Oh, ACM. Excuse me.
Yeah, human capital management. I'm sorry.
Okay, now human capital management. So, what is that? What does that mean?
Sure. So it's managing your biggest asset, the people in your organization. So it's not just doing your payroll. It's not just doing your HR. And it's not just staying compliant because you don't want a call or a letter from the IRS. It's all of that. But it's also, how do we onboard our employees? How do we make this a seamless experience? How do we keep in touch with them, keep them engaged? How do we benchmark salaries? How do we see when people are on their way out? And how do we coach them in and coach them out? And then at the end, from hire all the way to retire, you're always going to have the fire part. So what happens when you part ways? How do we handle, let's say COBRA or anything of that nature? And that's where the HCM platform can do beginning to end managing your people.
And so it helps make life easier for a business owner or for an HR department or both, kind of depending on the situation. Who's the typical client?
So it makes it easier for both of them as well as the employee themselves. So, for example, you and I are about to have a child, right? On our tax forms, we have to change our dependencies. If there's an HR department to go to, normally without a system in place, you would call and say, hey, I need to change my dependencies. If you move, I need to change my address, really basic stuff, change my direct deposits. With the platform that we have, you can do that through the app as the employee.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that takes the burden off of the HR, off of the C-levels, sure, and then just gives the responsibility to you as the employee.
That's interesting. So do you find in this scenario with certain companies that you're actually able to save on headcount and people, like, look, nobody wants to gut an HR department, and I'm not saying that's what you guys do, but I am thinking about it as, like, as a business owner, does it help to have a software platform like this to pay for it, and does that help save on long-term overhead on salaries of manual things happening with a person? Does that make sense?
It does, and that is a route that you can go. Another way is that if you already have an HR department, there's, just like any other platform, there's different levels of service. Mm-hmm. So could you use this in lieu of an HR department? For sure. But if you have one already, especially for businesses that are growing in multiple states, there's a lot of things to figure out. It's a way to get all the information and assist your HR company as well. So whether you're growing or you have it, an HCM company or a provider would be beneficial to just streamline all of your activity as well as educate. Because if you have somebody Googling and then that liability is on you as a company, the biggest thing I like to say is I could change the oil in my car, but the risk versus reward is not worth it for me. And I'd rather pay somebody, a couple bucks to do it.
Sure.
If they break it, they fix it.
Sure.
Flip it around. If you have an HCM provider, you submit your taxes on your own, you get the letter, you figure it out. If we submit it for you, that liability is pushed off on the HCM provider. So who would you rather have talking to the IRS? Yourself or a company that has been doing this and has the people, in the DC area and, all the litigation and fun stuff that nobody wants to deal with?
Yeah.
And then you can figure out, or you can focus more on your business and not worry about that stuff.
Interesting. Okay, that's cool. And I've got lots of questions about this HCM platform.
Yeah.
So, the way, like, I'm going through the process right now of looking into buying a CRM. So I'm going to buy a CRM.
Like a Salesforce?
We're going to go with HubSpot, most likely.
That's what my company uses.
Yeah, and it's a good platform. It's especially scalable for small businesses as well.
Yes.
So we're not a big business. We have 5 full-time people on our team. Only 2 of us are going to use the CRM, really, maybe 3 at the next 6 months.
Yeah.
And so it's a good place to start, and it's fairly inexpensive. You mix the CRM with something like an Apollo.io and something with Sales Navigator, and then you've got this kind of like $250 a month sales package that works pretty well, right?
I feel like you work with me. I use all 3 of those platforms as well.
See, and so we're just about to install that with our business. But
nice.
I guess my question is, with an HCM, it sounds like, and just reiterating, that you can kind of start small with those types of platforms, and then it scales with a business, which meets people and businesses where they are. Is that correct?
Absolutely, spot on. So that's the most important thing, is sitting down, figuring out where the need is, because just like any service, you can do so many different things.
Right, all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, but if you want to start and just say, okay, I want to keep my compliance when it comes down to my payroll. I want my taxes paid quarterly, locally, federally, whatever it is. I want this all done properly, and I don't want to be, liable for this. I want to have the liability put on the company that's taking care of me, just so I have peace of mind. I know this is being done correctly.
Correct. Right.
That's where you can start. And then from there, let's figure out the employee experience. Let's figure out the HR side. Let's figure out about streamlining. Am I offering benefits? Are my employees W-2? Are they 1099? What should they be? Why should they be? All these questions, maybe not in that order, but you can dive into that stuff. And somebody like myself would be more than happy to sit down and help you figure it out.
Gotcha. That's very cool. And so if you're looking for this type of tool out there, this is obviously a good place to start. Something that has been a thread on this podcast recently, beyond just our last episode with Adam where we talked directly about it, is something about skill acquisition. And I'm very intrigued by this idea of skill acquisition right now.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to hear your take on skills that you've felt you've had to acquire, that you already had maybe, that you've had to acquire and have acquired, or things that have been potentially challenging that you are still working on or don't have yet. Can you elaborate on that potentially?
Yeah, for sure. So being in sales, I'd say the biggest skill that I have is the ability to speak, right? You have to put together what you have going on in a way that other people are going to understand, even though you talk about it every day. You don't do payroll every day or payroll HR conversations. So how do I have the conversation with you and we understand what each other is talking about, right? Take your business, flip it around. Like everybody has to figure out how to say what they do in a way that everybody understands.
Yes.
So that's something that growing up, public speaking was my favorite class. Like most people dread it. So getting out there and talking, that's a skill that I've had and I've been able to hone and just get better. The biggest thing that I needed to work on is my communication style.
Okay.
So working with different people means different personalities.
Okay.
Working with different personalities means different talk styles, different attitudes, different emotions. So how do you as one person talk to so many different people and deliver the same message? And that's where personal development comes into play. So my manager has a great saying, and it's practice on your peers instead of your prospects. So working with my team or recording myself, reading up on the way to talk. Jeb Blount is my favorite author.
Jeb Blount. Okay.
Yep. And he has all these different books. You can also, as a little shout out, the Challenger Sale is my favorite book of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so a nice red book, white words on the front. That's a great way because when you're talking, it's not just about delivering the message and having somebody sit there and nod. Like that's great, but was it valuable? It's about having a conversation and at the end of it or during it, the person you're talking to is like, I never thought of it that way. So when you reframe the way somebody thinks, then you really made an impact. Now take that on the sales, take that in life, like whichever you want to do. Yeah. But that's a biggest skill that I've been working on and just developing. And, it's always a constant education process.
Learning to challenge not just other people but yourself in a conversation, it sounds like to me. It's like you're challenging them by asking them questions that they might not know the answer to, and they might not even know what the question means, and you're challenging yourself by getting out of your comfort zone and changing the way you communicate with people.
For sure. And it's a constant learning curve on your side because everybody's style is different. So you might get something thrown at you and the way you speak is not the style in which they communicate.
Sure.
So this is not just sales. This is not just, work. This is personal too. So
sure.
It's with, your relationship with your wife. It's your relationship with your friends, your family, and just understanding how everybody works. Because as humans, we're all different. So you have to constantly work on yourself. So, you can, that's the best investment you can make so you can understand how everybody else works.
It's very insightful. Have you, moving to the South, I guess, have you noticed that, communication styles have been different? Has it made an impact? Do you even think about it? Or is it something that you've had to kind of learn and work around?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the transition from the New York, New Jersey, even Pennsylvania lifestyle to the North Carolina lifestyle is very different. The biggest benefit is that a lot of people in this area now are coming from that area.
There are. Yeah.
So that's great, that I can relate to a lot of people like that. But there's a lot of hustle and bustle that I come from in the New York, New Jersey area. And down here, the pace is a little different sometimes. And that's been the biggest transition for myself. And with that, I go back to where I have to learn and understand people's processes. It's not that it's wrong. It's not that it's different. It's the way that it is done down here. And there's a reason for it. So for me to understand, it's very thorough. I want to make sure everything that I'm doing is correct. This is a tight-knit community. This isn't the big city. Let's work together. Let's spread the word, because networking, just like we do every Wednesday, is so important, and that's more important than the individual sale.
Yeah.
Because you can affect everybody by sharing your network. You only affect one person or their one company with a sale. So understanding the difference between the North and the South way of like selling and talking,
interesting.
It was interesting when I came down here, but it's been very valuable to understand the why.
So I have not lived in like the Tri-State area or even a really big city. This is I guess I lived in Indy, but it's not a big city. Are things a little more transactional in those types of environments, would you say?
Yeah, especially when you get to like smaller business. So you might just be going in there talking about price. You might be saying, hey, I have a problem. Let me figure this out.
Right.
But it's not the latent buyer where they're not looking right now. It might be a down the road thing. That's the people where you can educate. You can grow together with them. And then when the time is right, at least they know you as a resource. So if it's not your product, at least they are aware of what the options are.
I wonder if that has something to do with just population density too, where when you're talking about in New York City, there's 9 million people in the, the metro or like the direct metro. There's more leads, there's more opportunities, there's more things. You can sort of just churn and burn through candidates and things. Whereas here, there might only be 100,000 businesses total that you can work with, right? And so if you're just churning and burning through those and not trying to build those relationships, you don't have that many opportunities to close business here. Is that fair to say? It
is. And it's also the way that your company wants to go to market. So for example, being with my previous company, Paychex, big box company,
Sure.
It's like the Nike Reebok of shoes,
Right.
like it's something that everybody's aware of in that industry.
Yeah.
So they have a presence and they want the market share. They want it to be transactional so that way they can move on to the next, right? Let me just keep going, grow my market share, and then my name is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Where a company such as PNI, where I'm at now, we all want to have more business, but we want to do it the right way, where it's not bringing somebody in that isn't ready for the platform, where it's not bringing somebody in on products that are below or above what they need. So there's a process, and it's a process that we respect, and it's a process that we go throughout every time we work with a client or even a prospect. And that's making sure that we understand their needs. When it aligns, we agree on how it's going to work throughout the implementation process. And we're not going to start doing this next week. We're going to gather information. You're going to meet our team. You're going to set a game plan. And it's going to be very thorough. So that way, when you work with us, you stay with us. And that's why there's been the 6% or lower turnover instead of the higher turnover
Sure.
of the industry average.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that about that industry, but when you say it, it does make sense because it's a fairly, I don't want to say it's an easy switch to switch payroll stuff, but I have done it myself in the past, and it's not completely easy. It's harder than switching your tax people, or it's easier than switching your tax people though.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that's interesting. Switching gears a little bit, I'd be interested. You seem very insightful as a young man, and you know what's going on. Have you had a mentor or somebody in your career that's been an important part of, making you who you are?
Well, the biggest thing I can say is my parents. So I have a very strong relationship with them. I still do, even though we're, a couple states away.
Sure.
But having the ability to lean on family, my parents, my brothers, my wife, even my son, it just gives you that insight as well as the education with that continual support. And that's something that I'm forever grateful for.
Very cool. Very cool. And, talking about the payroll and HR industry, have you seen changes in your time in that industry? Do you see changes coming down the pipe? Where do you think of the HR and payroll industry in general? I'm sure technology and AI might have something. AI is like a generalized term now. It's
Sure.
It's AI. But does it impact things? Are there ways to automate HR in a better way? Are there changes you see coming down the pipe?
Yeah, and it's funny that you say AI is becoming generalized because it's the same thing for me when I hear the word integration.
You're right.
Right? It's like I integrate with that. Okay, now I have to ask how.
Right.
What do you do? Because they're very broad terms.
Correct. We have an API. Okay, cool. That means nothing.
Give me more.
I need more details on that.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I've seen in the industry over, about a decade in it is that you have to, and this is the biggest reason why I switched over to PNI, is because you have to have that relationship with the client, the understanding of their business, as well as, are we good?
Yeah.
As well as the ability to grow with them. So if it's a transactional pace, which it was in the past, and especially pre-COVID, I saw it was very, very transactional. COVID hit pause on the world, and it switched more to the HR side, and it made payroll more transactional than it was before because all the changes, every week there was a new law. Is my business open? Is it closed? How do I serve food? How do I shake hands? Do I shake hands?
Yeah.
It was wild for a year-ish. So that put a big focus on the HR. I feel like moving forward, being able to have the guidance from a company such as Payroll Network and an HCM platform to have the HR controlled, understand the way that the laws work. We have the election coming up. We have laws that previous presidents have brought into effect that are about to go away. And if they're renewed or they're not, a lot of that's going to be decided on by who sits in the office next.
Okay.
So take that moving forward. Taxes might change, brackets might change. There's different things that change just with legislation on a monthly basis.
Yep.
So staying compliant and up to date with that stuff, I think, is the most important thing that has changed since COVID. And it's something that's going to keep going. And it needs to be on an automated process to help the people that are sitting there doing it.
That's interesting. So policy and our leadership that we vote in or out makes a big impact on your business day to day, it sounds like.
For sure.
That's very interesting. And that kind of brought up an idea that I think is interesting. And I don't know if you guys or anybody else thinks about this too much, but is there talk in the world of HR and payroll of more transparency or less transparency with salaries and things like that? Like, how does that work now? Is that a thought that goes into that, or is that a private thing between an employer and an employee? How does that work?
So what I can speak to is something that HCM platforms, they provide for the people that use them. And that's a thing called salary benchmarking. And that's where if you're hiring somebody and you want to see what the industry average is, just any statistic and more data on that, not just a Google search, what's the average pay for an account executive, and they'll give you more data with your HCM system, depending on location, depending on, think about the AOL days, the ASL, right? So based on who they are, where they are, everything that comes into the demographic, you'll get the feedback from a national average with the salary benchmarking. So it makes it more transparent on an overall level at the organizational level to help you decide on how much to offer somebody so you're not over or underpaying.
Interesting. Okay, that's cool. What excites you about your job? What's the most exciting thing about your gig?
That is a great question. And it's the reason why I switched over to Payroll Network. It is the ability to become embedded in the Raleigh community. It's the ability to not just make an impact on businesses by helping them with their platform, but it's by helping them with my network. For example, we have a webinar coming up at the end of the month in August, where we're going to teach businesses and companies how to be more philanthropic and give to their community and streamline that process and keep track of that process. So that way it can help the nonprofits in your community. So it's a way for our platform and our company to become more one with the community that we're in and help grow and better the lives of others by providing a product that's, a viable option for them.
Very good. That's excellent. So obviously, we're part of Purpose Networking. This is the Purpose Podcast Raleigh. Check us out at Purpose Podcast. We'll go over some of that at the end, but it is a networking podcast and we do networking. And I'd be interested to hear your take on, number one, how you find and have found networking opportunities, such as Purpose Networking, and two, how they've been effective for you, if they have been or what hasn't been, and three, maybe something you've learned that you would pass on to someone else. So, how do you find these things? Are they effective and why? And then what would you teach someone else that's looking to do networking themselves?
Yeah, the how do you find these things, to me, is just asking. So how did I find Purpose Networking Group? I walked into Tim's office.
Okay.
And I introduced myself.
Tim Hunter, Fidelity Bank.
Yeah. I walked in. Hey, I'm Sean. I'm going to be working the Raleigh market with Payroll Network. You got time to get to know each other. I would love to see if we can work together or share our networks with each other.
So you just like went out and found bankers.
Yeah, well, not just bankers. That's how I grew my community, as well as people that I interact with, on a day-to-day basis.
Did you bank at Fidelity, or you just said, I want to talk to this guy?
Yeah, so as you alluded to in the meeting today, right, you have to start off with a list. Mm-hmm. I started off with a list of these are the people that I feel would be beneficial to work with for me, and that I could provide value for them.
Sure.
So Tim was one of my stops.
Cool.
Knocked on his door. He was doing something else, didn't expect me. Hey, I'm Sean. We just started talking. I think it was the day before the Purpose Networking event. He's like, if you want to come tomorrow.
Because he's the nicest guy.
He is. And I showed up the next day, and the rest is history. Here we are sitting together now a few months later.
Nice.
So going out there and just making it happen, understanding who you are relevant to in the beginning, so that way you have a common ground for communication.
Yeah.
But then after that, just talking with them. So talking with somebody like Tim, talking with somebody like you. Hey, how can I help you? What are you looking for in a partner? Is there anybody that I can connect you with? Like, what I do. I know what you do. So if we need each other's services, we could always pull the trigger. But how can I help you grow your network and expand, maybe your clientele or your referral base? And then you tell me, okay, it would help me out with ABC. Cool. So now I just look at my network and I share that with you. Flip it around, do the same with me. And that's my advice on how to grow your network is find the people that you can relate to, have one-on-ones with them, make sure that they pass the vibe check because you have to like who you work with, and then ask each other how you can help and just grow from there.
That's very cool. Yeah, so, I mean, it's fairly straightforward, it sounds like. Just make a list of people that you think you could be a good fit for professionally. Mm-hmm. Go introduce yourself to them, and you would recommend in person, or is there a way that, like, we're talking about, look, I want to get into sales strategy a little bit because it's on my mind with my business, right? So you're talking about having a CRM, what is Apollo? It's not a CRM. It's like a sales.
It's like a tool. Yeah.
It's a sales tool that integrates CRM with leads lists and with sales nav, right?
Yeah.
So are you using those tools initially to find people and then make a list, or are you just how do you start?
So for me, I'm a very straightforward, and I like to go out and be hands-on.
Sure.
So that's where knocking on somebody's door and just saying, hi, I'm Sean.
Yeah.
That works very well for me.
Right.
So flip it around for a different personality, or even for somebody like me too. Another way you can do it is I like to use LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Put together a message, and if you don't use the tool Grammarly, it helps you very much with like your punctuation and your wording. And
sure.
My goal in life is to be able to speak as well as my Grammarly makes me sound. So nice. That's another tool, like Apollo, that can be added to your pocket. Your pocket. But putting together a message and sending it out to that list on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I use the inbox method on there, or InMail.
Yeah.
And just, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to do. You got time to chat. You're going to get a lot of no answers.
Sure.
But it's just like anything else in sales. Like, your product's not for everybody.
No.
Neither is mine. But the ones that do need our product, we make such an impact on that it's okay having that high failure rate, because that success rate is going to go through the roof and make changes in both of our lives.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And that's how it works with networking.
And you start with that initial meeting. I think it's not even, you're not asking people to buy something initially, right? It's just, hey, can I get a chance to meet you and get to know you and talk to you about what I do and figure out what you do and see how we can help each other.
Yeah, and it's like we said before, right? I know what you do, you know what I do.
Right.
Right? If I need what you sell, I know who to go to. So flip it around. So you won't work with or buy from somebody if you don't enjoy working with them.
Sure.
And I think selling through education is the best way to go, because if it's not today, it might be another time, but nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Shout out to P&G. They said that a few weeks ago, and it's stuck in my head.
That's cool.
And I love that so much. Provide the value and let them know that not only is your product good, but you are a good person, because that's the biggest thing.
Yep.
And then everything else will just work itself out.
It works itself out. Giver's gain.
Yeah.
That's the book. That's what you do. We got a few minutes left. I want to get to know you a little bit. What do you do for fun? What are you into? What's your passion? You got a family, obviously. That's a big part of it. What do you do for fun? What are you into?
Yeah, so being married with kids. It's a little different than, it used to be, but
it's going to change? Are you saying my life is going to change with this
I
baby
give it
is
about-
born in the next 3 days?
Yeah, give it about a week and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Sean, I don't believe you.
You got my number. If you need any
Yeah,
help, we're good to
exactly.
go.
Whew.
But the biggest thing that I'm into, and I would highly stress for someone in your spot with a baby coming, is that you're always worried about your wife. You're always worried about your kid. You're worried about your job. Take time to be worried about you.
Yeah.
And whether it's something simple, breathing exercises, reading a book, anything, right? We take a lot of burden, being a father and as a husband, and we need to make sure that we're in the right frame of mind to take care of our responsibilities.
Yep.
So it's like autopilot to take care of stuff, right? Like, oh, you're pregnant. Cool. What do I got to do? You get that list, right? Oh, I got to go to work. What do I got to do? But make sure that you're good in here and in here. So for me, like what things I like to do is I like to go to the gym. I like to do my breathing exercises, just anything that's like self-betterment with like the reading of the books. I like to include my son with that.
Yeah.
We started going to the gym together.
Cool.
He's 12. He's loving it. He's like, oh, I'm going to body everybody in lacrosse. I'm like, you get him.
Yeah.
It's been a day. Let's be a little more consistent. But it's so exciting, to share that stuff. And I don't know, the reading and focusing on yourself will not only make you a better person, but it will make you a better husband, a better father, and just an all-around great individual.
Expert advice, it sounds like. Expert advice from Sean, guys. Expert. Take care of yourself, and everything else will take care of it. So that's very cool. So tell us a little bit about how people can find out about your company, your service. Where can they go? How can they contact you?
Yeah, so the company, very straightforward. We're Payroll Network Incorporated, Human Capital Management. So to make it easy, PNI-HCM.com. You could also reach out to me. I'm on the PNG page on the back, so you can see all the people that are part of the group. Mm-hmm. I'm under the payroll side. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out.
That's fantastic. Yeah, if you guys are looking for this type of service, you just want to learn more about HR and payroll and things like that, reach out to Sean, get a meeting with him, schedule that. If you're in Purpose Networking, make sure you schedule your personal meeting. And if you are looking to network in the Raleigh area, feel free to stop by Purpose Networking. We meet every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. at Raleigh Founded Gateway. And then on the first Wednesday of every month, we meet at Yard House in North Hills at 5 p.m. I threw up a 4. It was actually 5. So please stop by and come say hello. If you want to be on the podcast, you can go to purposenetworking.org, and we're interested in having guests and getting to know fellow business people and entrepreneurs here in the area. So, Sean, thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate it. It's nice to get to know you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And you can find us on Apple and Spotify and YouTube at Purpose Podcast Raleigh. Thanks, guys, so much.